Today I'm going to talk about something that's been on my heart and that like a lot of my friends have asked me about lately. And it's something that I kind of have like a little bit of experience with. And so, I just thought, it'd be a good time to share it, and maybe, it might relate to some of you guys. But before we get started, I'd like to ask a couple questions. So who here out of this congregation would say that they know a lot of stuff, just like I have knowledge. I know quite a few things, Kelly, yes, I agree with that one. Just like, there's a lot of smart people in this room. I see teachers, people who work in the medical field. So I'd say there's people who know a lot of stuff, but who here would say they know everything? Like, that's what I'm talking about, Lauren. You do know everything. See? I mean, there's some people here I think might know everything too. There's a good possibility. Lauren definitely does, no doubt. Right, Lauren? We going across the street or we going next door? All right. Here's another question. Who here wishes they knew everything? Nobody wishes they knew. There. See, thank you for the honesty. I'm just saying, I wish I knew everything. That'd make things a lot easier. If someone's like, oh, what's a square root of 256? And someone just blurs out the answer. I bet you someone here knows that. But who knows someone who thinks they know everything? Oh, a lot more hands go up. Exactly. We all know somebody who thinks they know everything. I bet, and Nikki probably can vouch for me. Back in high school, I was someone who thought they knew everything, like a lot of the time. I would go around, people would be talking, they wouldn't be talking to me, and they'd be like, I don't know this, and I just blurt in like, oh, it's this. Like, I would just give them an answer right away. It could be 100% wrong, but I thought I knew everything. But so what I want to kind of talk about is, life is pretty easy, and following God is a lot easier when we know things make sense. When a lot of stuff in front of us and a lot of things in our lives make sense. But what about when things don't make sense? Because, like we said here, only like one person raised their hand and said they knew everything. And we know people who think they know everything, but clearly as human beings, we're very limited. We don't know everything, and we're never going to know anything. And we can know knowledge, we could know how deep Mariana Trench is, or, how big all these things are, but we are never ever going to know everything. And so, here's another question, who here's been in a situation where things didn't really make sense? Like, you're just saying, like, no matter what it was, things just didn't make sense to us. It's probably happened to all of us. If not, spoiler alert, your life's going to have a situation where it's not going to make sense. And some examples of that, one of my friends, lately, their mother got colon cancer. And earlier in their life, their grandfather died like suddenly as well from cancer. And the question that they brought to me, and they said, like, it just doesn't make sense, They're good people, like, they've done nothing wrong, they lived healthy lives even, like, they took care of themselves, but yet they're getting sick. It doesn't make sense to me. Another thing is, I had someone that I know that just randomly lost their job, like a job that was pretty secure, and they thought that they're going to have this job forever. All of a sudden, gone. Like, they lost their job, and it didn't make sense to them. They didn't know why they were losing their job, And then, or just in general, something that's constant in your life, there's certain things that we rely on that are pretty constant in our lives that sometimes just disappear with no warning signs, no nothing, and they're just gone just like that. So the question I always get is, what do I do? Why is this happening? What do I do? What do we do in these situations? And me being the, know-it-all sometimes, I'll try to give them an answer, but ultimately I end up saying this, is that I can't give you specifically what to do and how to go about each and every single day. I can't be there today and be like, oh, you need to do this today. Oh, you need to do this today. Only one person can give us those answers. Does anyone know who that person is? Jesus, exactly. But what this situation makes me think of is one of my favorite verses, and it's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. So does anybody know this verse? Anybody off the top of their head? If not, that's fine. I'm going to say it. Exactly. That's exactly. Let's give them an applause. That's what I'm talking about. Memorizing scripture. Love it. So I want to kind of point at a couple things in that verse that, you know, sometimes we read over and it sounds good, but we don't take time to really acknowledge it. So think of the first line. Trust in the Lord with some of your heart. Oh wait, never mind. It's not some of your heart, it's all of your heart. A lot of times we go about life and we'll trust God with most things, you know. We'll trust Him with most of the things that are right in front of us, but we trust Him with all of our heart and all of the things. And I'll go expand on that a little bit more in a second here. But then I want to go off the second point, which is lean on your own understanding. Oh, wait, no, it's not lean on our understanding. It's lean not on our own understanding. Like we just talked about, we did this little survey. We don't know everything, you know. Our understandings, oh, perfect, right. Our understandings are not always going to be correct, and we're not always going to understand things the way that they're meant to be, you know. None of us can see the future. I mean, if we could, that'd be awesome. We'd been on That's So Raven instead of Raven Simone. It would have been That's So Pastor Jim, and that would have been, I'm sure it would have been a great show still, but I mean, we can't really tell the future in the same sense. Sorry, I'm kind of dating myself a little bit with that show. But what do we know? What do we know about God and the person who has all the answers? For one, we know that He is all-knowing. We don't know that He doesn't know just some things or just a few things. God knows everything. Like, for example, who here knows when the earth was created or when the universe was created? Can anyone give me a specific date?
0.
I don't know either, exactly. Like, we don't know how long ago it was. We only know that we're in year 2018 and the history is the history. I mean, and people have been trying to figure this out for, you know, thousands of years, you know, for as long as possible. But yet, no one ever agrees on it. It's just speculation because none of us has been there. We also none of us have been to every single planet. I know that, like, right now, scientists are trying to discover, you know, a planet that could sustain life. I mean, but us knowing everything, we know which planet's out there that could sustain life. I mean, we can move there now. There's a lot of movies about it, but, you know, us know-it-alls, we already know it's out there, so we're just going to go live there already. But the thing is we're not all-knowing. God is all-knowing. And so what kind of goes along with this is faith. You know, we talk about our relationship and our faith in God, you know, but what does that, like, look like, and what does that need, you know? So we talk about in the first line, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. So you have to have faith in order to trust, correct? Like, you can't just trust, like, I can't just trust that that piano is going to turn into a guitar just randomly and it's going to turn a guitar. I have to have faith that it would do that, or that it would even play music and that it would work, you know? Faith and trust have to go together in this situation. And so that's why I want to kind of talk about this thing called conditional trust. So does anyone know what conditional trust is? No, sorry, I had to look it up too. Let me flip pages here. Conditional trust is trusting only when things are given to us, or when it's right in front of us, you know. Trust. So say we pray to God for something and He gives it to us. Now, who here has prayed and God has always given the thing that they've asked for right away, or, you know, like right that second? Everything that you prayed for. So, like, if I were to pray for a Lamborghini right now, it'd just show up outside and I'd be driving off and you guys would be a little jealous. You know, like, a lot of times we have conditional trust is when we go to God and we say, oh God, I trust you, and, you know, it's just the things that are right in front of us. But do we trust God with the things that we don't know and the things that don't make sense in our lives? And so, like, the point I have to bring up is we can't have conditional trust. If we have conditional trust, then life is going to, a lot of times, it's going to get away from us, and we're going to think, oh, this doesn't make sense. Well, I prayed for it. Why isn't it happening? You know, obviously, it's never ever going to get better, or God can't fix the situation. Like we start, I know we start to question God. I'm not saying that we're never ever going to question God, but we don't see the second part in this verse, which is we have to submit to Him. So that goes along with submitting to him. You're probably not going to give him conditional trust if you're submitting to God, correct? Right? We're going to give him our unconditional trust. But faith at the same time goes along with that. If we don't believe that God can do the things that he's promised, then we're not going to trust him in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So, like what I was saying previously, is God doesn't always give us what we pray for, you know, but people always ask me, why doesn't he do that? Well, there's this thing called God's will, you know, and we a lot of times think we know God's will. Oh, I know God's will for my life. I'm going to go do this, and then this, and then this, and then this, and then this. Like, we just go through life thinking we know what God's will is. But a lot of times, we can only see what's in front of us right now. All of us right now can only view what is in our lens at this moment in church right now. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen the rest of the day even. And Paul talks about it. He says, why worry about tomorrow when today is not even like guaranteed? There's enough trouble for today in itself, and yet we're worried about other things. And so how in the world are we going to know what God's will is for our lives, for what's going to happen, if we can only worry about today and only even imagine today? So God doesn't really answer his prayer based on what we want and all the wants that we need, but what's in line with his will. So like my friend whose mom has colon cancer, their family's kind of believers, kind of not. And so what I've been praying during this time is because I've been praying for them, you know, because obviously the best case scenario, we want her healed, you know, we want her to be healed and everything to go right, but I don't know if that's what's going to happen. You know, maybe sometimes God is going to say, maybe God will heal her and say, use it to say, hey, look at the power that I have, and they see that the power that God used to heal her, and you know, maybe it brings their family to believe, you know. Maybe she doesn't get healed, you know, and people are going to go through life thinking, you know, maybe it might not help their family specifically, but it might help someone else, you know. But either way, we don't know how God's going to use this situation. I mean, we will probably in the future when everything's said and done, you know, once we look back on the situation, but we don't know at this moment what's going to happen and how God's going to will it. But we can still, obviously we still want to continue to pray for healing and stuff like that, but ultimately God's the only one who knows what's going to happen. And so when this life doesn't make sense, we have to have faith and trust in him. And now I know, easier said than done, going about life, all right, I'm just going to trust God today, guys, I'll catch you later. And then just walk around and be like, oh, nothing's going wrong. I mean, I trust God, it's all good. You know, obviously there's going to be obstacles when life doesn't make sense. We're going to have questions. We're not going to know the answer. Like we talked about earlier, we don't know everything. We're not going to have the answer. But what can we do? We can trust in the person that has all the answers. So as I was writing this down, I was thinking about an analogy of, you know, God being all-knowing and us not knowing anything and then handling something. Who all here has taken a test in school before? I hope everybody, but even a spelling test. But when we take a test, we study, you know. Sometimes we can study for long hours and be pretty confident about what we know. But then what if someone comes along and says, hey, I got all the answers right here. You know, if you just use all these answers real quick, you'll pass the test. Like, it's not cheating at all. The teacher's like, I'll let you use the answers and this cheat sheet and you're good to go. But we're like, nah, I don't want the answers. I don't want help at all. I'm just going to, you know, take this test and do the best that, you know, just do whatever. God has those answers and he's literally saying like, here, you can use these answers on the test, but you have to trust me that they're right. You could be like, they could be wrong answers. Because a lot of people I know in school, now we don't have to raise hands for this one. We all know that we've gone to a friend and be like, hey, can you help me out with this test real quick? I know you took it in the past. What's the answer to, you know, question number 3? I'm not saying we have to raise hands right now. But we know God has the correct answers and the right answers. And you know, he's not always going to give us those answers, but we have to trust that those answers are correct and that he's going to guide us down the right path, which is the last part of that sentence. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. He's not saying that if you trust me, things are going to go bad and terrible down the road. He's made a promise. He says he will make your path straight. He's going to lead us to something better. He's going to use it for good. He's not trying to use it for bad or for terrible things. He promises us and he says, I want to use it for good, and I want to use it to straighten your path. It might not make sense in the middle of it. And a lot of times in the middle of it, we have no idea what is going on. And we're sitting here asking, why? Why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? You know? And we're not going to know. And we may not know maybe until we even get to heaven. But he's not letting you go through the situation. He's not carrying you through the situation to use it for bad in the end, or to use it to torture you. You know? It may not make sense to us right now, but he promises us that he will make our path straight. So, like I have it written down here, this last point in it is, God will ultimately use it for our good. You know? And he's promised that all throughout the Bible, that he's not trying to use things for the bad of those who are called according to his purpose, but for the good of those that are called to according to his purpose. You know what I'm saying? And so, life is not always going to make sense. And even at like 22 years old, life doesn't always make sense to me either. And I know it doesn't make sense to us a lot of the time. But God has given us something, and it says, you have to trust in me. You have to trust that my understandings are greater than yours. Like when we talked about today and we realized, oh, we don't know everything. God does know everything, and he's like, lean on my understandings. Because my understandings are great, and my understandings are ultimately good, and they're also the best. No one's understandings are better than God's, and if they are, I mean, God is not only is God all-knowing, but he's all-present. So he not only can see now, he can see the past, he can see the future, he can see 30 seconds from now, when I pull my shirt down or something like that. Like, he can see everything, you know what I'm saying? So why would we trust in our understandings that are so limited to what is going on right now? And now I know that there's going to be stress and anxiety and things that are going to be constantly tempting you, but like, you need to know the answer to this. If you don't know the answer to this, then you can't do this, you can't do this. Why don't we let go and say, you know what? I trust God with this. I'm putting my full faith and trust in him to know that he has promised me that he will make it out for my good. He's not trying to destroy me in the middle of it. He's not going to try to destroy me at the end of it. He wants to use it eventually for his good. Okay? But, as we see there towards the end in verse 6, submit to him. If we don't submit to him, other translations say acknowledge him as well. So, if we say, you know, oh, this situation sucks, God, why? But we're not submitting to him and saying, okay, Lord, I'm coming to you, I'm submitting to you. But it has to be a daily thing. You can't submit to God for one day, and then for the rest of the week, be like, oh, why is this happening? Oh, this sucks. Like, just go about whining and complaining and doing all these things. God says, come to me, submit to me. Come to me and let me rest in my arms. He's promised us that he wants to use it for our good, but we have to go to him. We can't sit here and do it ourselves. We just talked about, and I've said this probably 15 times already, we can't just go off the things that we know. We have to put our rest and our trust in him, but it can't be just one time. It's got to be again and again and again. And I'm pretty sure, I think I had a quote about this when I came up here one Sunday, is consistency is everything. If we're not consistent with it, we're not going to, you know, be able to trust God. Because who here trusts someone who... So there's two types of people in the world, right? There's people who will do one thing and say another, and they're just all over the place, and one moment they're off jumping off a cliff, skydiving, and the next moment they're reading a book. I mean, not saying that those are bad things, but how are you going to... Who here trusts people who are all over the walls, and just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? No one. No one has an easy time trusting someone who's back and forth, back and forth. So how are you going to trust God when you're not consistently going to him? If we're jumping away from the thing that we can consistently rely on, it's going to be a hard time for us to trust him, correct? So we have to submit to him consistently. I didn't write this book, obviously, but if I had to write that, it has to be every single day, you know? So it has to be again and again and again. where consistency is the key to this, where we don't know what's going on. I have to go to God today and say, Lord, I don't know what is happening, but I know that you are going to ultimately work it out for my good. And so what I want to kind of close with is just a couple points just to like wrap this all together. And life doesn't always make sense, and we won't always have the answers. And that's not a bad thing, okay? If we had all the answers, what would we need God for? You know what I'm saying? There's been a lot of times we sit here and think, I need all the answers, but if you did, what would make God great and you lesser? If we were just as smart and just as knowledgeable and had all these powers as Him. So not having all the answers, that is okay. But in these moments, we must put our trust in the one who has all the answers and have faith that God will use it for your good and for His will. We have to put our trust in the one who has the answers to the test and know that those answers are correct. Not just someone who says, I have the answers, but then they're probably not correct, and then you just fail the test anyways. You know what I'm saying? You have to go to the one who has the correct answers to the test. And so are we going to continue to try being know-it-alls in situations where we don't know it all? So let's start with not trying to figure everything out automatically. We all go and we're trying to be the know-it-all and try to fix the situation, where instead, let's take a step back and say, Lord, I'm going to trust you in this. And I know that ultimately you're going to put it for a better good, but I have to submit to you. So let's submit to God today and say, Lord, I trust you. And when it doesn't make sense and when it's really hard, I'm going to continue to come to you. But we all know, as Pastor Jim says all the time, it starts with a relationship with Him. You can't trust someone you don't have a relationship with. I mean, you can, but it's probably not going to be a deeper trust if you don't have a relationship with it. So, like I said at the end, it starts when we start having a relationship with God. And so, I don't know everyone's hearts, and I don't know what everyone is going through, and I will not know what everyone eventually goes through. But I know that when you start having a relationship with Him, when life doesn't make sense, you can put your trust in the person who is consistent and constant in every single thing. And He has promised that to you over and over and over again. And He will continue to provide for you, even when you don't see how. We're not going to have all the answers, but we know that God does have all the answers, and we have to go to Him and put our trust in Him, regardless of what we may think is right. Us as limited human beings.